Good afternoon. As Lisa stated, I am Wendy Newton with the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support, and I'm going to talk to you today about Safe Schools data collection and reporting. I would first like to have our new Safe Schools consultant introduce himself. John?
Hi, good afternoon. As Wendy said, my name is John Hill. I'm a consultant within the Safe and Supportive Schools branch, and I look forward to working with you all this school year.
So I'm going to continue on with the presentation. John will be a contact moving forward for Safe Schools data collection and reporting. We have updated the data standards, which will be sent out to the Safe Schools administrators within the next week or so. The audience for this session would be, of course, your district Safe Schools administrators, school principals, and staff within schools responsible for student behavior data entry. So our first line of communication from KDE are to the district Safe Schools administrators. It is their responsibility to then disseminate the information to the appropriate school level staff. So, you know, when we send out the data standards or any kind of trainings or PowerPoints, please be sure to share those with the people in your district that actually enter the data into Infinite Campus on a daily basis. I'm going to skip down just a little bit to the last bullet when I'm talking about district Safe Schools administrators. Those people are designated in Person Role Manager through the KDE web application. So I work every year to make sure that those that distribution list is updated and maintained. But if there is a change in that role within your school district, you would need to work with your district WAPOC to get that updated in Person Role Manager, because that is our means of communication to the districts. As I stated earlier, some of the resources that we have available, the 2021-22 data standards for behavior have been updated. They are on the KSIS website. They're also on our our Safe Schools data collection and reporting website, which is linked there as well. Within the data standards and linked on the website, there is an overview webinar series that's really good. It was recorded a couple of years ago, so it's not out of date. There's not been a lot of new stuff with behavior since then, but it kind of goes through the sections that we'll be going through in this training session as a recorded webinar, and it'll allow you to just search for the section of the data standards that you're interested in looking at. So I encourage you to share that those webinars with your school level staff as well. KRS 158444, that is the reporting of discipline data statute. So that is the reason why we have Safe Schools reporting, defines what has to be reported to KDE for Safe Schools reporting. And again, that is linked in this PowerPoint and the data standards as well. So the first thing we're going to go through is behavior administration. And this is really only done over the summer months. You really shouldn't be changing anything in the behavior administration setup within the school year. Things like this should be looked at over the summer, and probably only your district level staff have access to do anything in this location. So that is under behavior and admin. That's the navigation path in Infinite Campus. There are three items under admin: behavior event types, which those are pre-populated by KDE. So these are your what did the student do? Was it skipping class, alcohol distribution, bullying, harassment, etc. Those are, like I said, are pre-populated by KDE, so there's no need for districts to add to those. If they do need to be added to, you should reach out to me or John to discuss that. Resolution types, these are maintained by the district. So these are, what is the consequence for the behavior? Any local resolutions meeting the definition of our state resolutions, which we'll go over here in just a little bit, should be mapped appropriately for Safe Schools reporting purposes. The districts can add any local resolutions they want, such as conference with student, call to parent, etc. Those are all resolutions that are locally determined and not maintained by the state. And then response types is the third item here, and these are used particularly to track responses to restraint or seclusion resolutions. And we'll talk more about restraint or seclusion a little bit later in this presentation as well. But those are the only 3 items under behavior admin. As I said, we would talk about state resolution codes a little bit. I'm not going to go through, in the next few slides, I kind of go through some definitions of these, but any local resolution added into Infinite Campus by school district should be mapped to the state code if it meets the definitions of one of these state resolution codes, because that is what triggers those resolutions to be part of the Safe Schools report. So if you, ones that a lot of times get added maybe over the summer are like in-school removals. So you add a ISS local code, in-school suspension local code. That meets the definition of in-school removal. So that local code has to be mapped to the state code of in-school removal. And we'll kind of go through those a little bit in the next couple of slides as well. But this, again, is under behavior and admin and resolution types. So expulsion. There are 2 options for expulsion: expelled with services and expelled without services. Most districts do not add these in the summer, so they're probably already set up, but we just want to give a little bit of bullet points regarding each of these resolutions. Expelled with services is removal resulting in a student's withdrawal from the school of attendance. All expulsions with or without services should be defined by local board policy. For SSP1 with services, the student continues to receive educational and IEP services. For expulsion without services, student does not receive educational services, and this resolution is not allowable for students with special education or students with disabilities. These students have to continue to receive their IEP services regardless. So there should not be any special education students assigned a expulsion without services. So for expelled with services, according to the Kentucky Pupil Attendance Manual, because we get this question a lot, so I've added it to the slide. For with services, students are marked absent for any day services were not received and they were supposed to be received. So if a student was supposed to receive services on Monday and did not receive those services, then he or she is marked absent. Regardless of absence, a district is eligible for up to 177 days on a seek adjustment for expulsions. And that's the same for without services as well. The difference for without services is students are marked absent every day of an expulsion because they're not receiving any services. So again, that can be found, more detail about that can be found in the Pupil Attendance Manual. Suspension and corporal punishment. Out of school suspension is our code of SSP3. So that's a student is removed from the regular educational setting and is not allowed back on school premises for a period of time. The key to out of school suspension is that it is tied to attendance. So your resolution start and end dates and times have to match the attendance start and end dates and times. And your check-in, check-out times are your authoritative. So if a student is suspended at 10 a.m., but they do not check out of school till 11 a.m., then the resolution start time is 11 a.m. So that's the key there. And there is a warning on Safe Schools to help clean up those discrepancies between attendance and suspension. Corporal punishment, this resolution should only be active in school, or in districts where the board policy allows it and defines it. So there's not a lot of school districts that still utilize corporal punishment. And we have worked over the past couple of years to help end-date those in districts that do not have it part of board policy. So we think that is cleaned up pretty good. But again, that has to be part of board policy for you to be able to have it active in your Infinite Campus system. Now removals. Removals are a little bit, this is where we get a lot more of our questions. Removals, the student is removed from the regular educational setting, but they continue to receive educational and IEP related services. The student still has to remain under direct supervision of school or district personnel. Something that changed a couple of years ago is removal includes non-instructional time. So it's not only just instructional time, was the student removed during lunch, during recess, any time from the time the bell rings in the morning till the time the bell rings in the afternoon, was the student removed from the regular educational setting. These resolutions are tracked by two different codes. There's in-school removal, which is the student is removed from their classroom and goes to another location in the same school. That's an in-school removal. In-district removal is the student is placed in another school in the same district. So they were at the middle school and they're sent to the high school, to the in-school suspension room at the high school. That is an in-district removal. Or they are at the high school and they are sent to the alternative program. That is considered an in-district removal. So those were separated last year. So you have two different codes for actual removals this year. That started in 2021 and will continue through 21-22 school year. I anticipate we may have questions about that, but we'll get questions at the end from Lisa. And I do want to reiterate that any local resolutions that meet the definition of in-school or in-district removal do need to be mapped to that state code so that we can get that data in your Safe Schools report. Restraint and seclusion. Restraint, I put the official definitions here that come from 704 KAR 7160. Restraint is our code is SSP 7, which is a personal restriction that immobilizes or reduces the ability of a student to move the student's torso, arms, legs, or head freely. Seclusion is the involuntary confinement of a student alone in a room or area from which the student is prevented from leaving. This is different than in-school removal. Seclusion is the student is completely alone and confined. So I'm not going to go into a lot about restraint and seclusion. Jared Sloan is actually the data steward for restraint and seclusion, but we do have information in our data standards, and restraint and seclusion resolutions require a behavior response. So those are covered in section E of the behavior data standards. If you have a SSP 7 resolution, then you have to have a corresponding response that gives all the details about the resolution. And the same for seclusion. If you have a resolution, you have to have a corresponding response. If you have a response, you have to have a corresponding resolution. And again, that's all covered in section A of the data section E of the data standards. Okay, so now we're going to get in a little bit about data entry. Again, all of this is in your data standards document. The first thing that you have to enter in is the actual incident information. The path to enter a student's behavior data is found in Infinite Campus via behavior and then the behavior management tool. And that kind of walks you through each of the sections that we're going to go through in the next few slides. Incident detail is part of section B of the behavior data standards. The required fields here are that you must enter the date and time the incident actually occurred, not the default date and time of when you're entering the record. When did it actually occur? And then the required fields that are highlighted in red on the data entry screen are the date and time of the incident, the context, which is this one's a little more confusing. There's details in the data standard, but what is the context of the incident? Did it occur at a school sponsored event during school hours, not during school hours, or not a school sponsored event during school hours? So was it a school sponsored event, and then was it during school hours or not during school hours? Again, the data standards expand on that and give some examples. And then behavior event location is required. So did it happen on the school bus or the classroom or the office, playground, field trip, etc.? So those are the required fields on the incident detail screen. The next section is the event detail, and this is kind of the first step in triggering whether this is a Safe Schools qualifying event or not. Again, it's all under behavior management tool for the student data entry, and event detail is outlined in section C of the behavior data standards. So you would want to select the appropriate event type from the drop list. So this is, what did the student do? Was it harassment? Was it skipping class? Was it drug possession, etc.? So you select that from the drop list, and that is required. 3 indicators on this screen are required to be selected if applicable, and do report on the Safe Schools report. Was there a call to the police because of this event? Was a school resource officer involved? And was the student referred to a court designated officer as a result of the event? So those 3 indicators are required if applicable to the event. Participant detail. This is where you assign the participant of the event to the event. And this is covered in section C of the behavior data standards. So you search and apply, you search for a student and apply the student's name to the behavior. 3 indicators here are required if the participant wasn't, if it occurred because, if the participant is arrested or charges filed, or if there are civil proceedings because of the event, then those indicators need to be selected and they will report on the Safe Schools report. When you select a student, if there's a red exclamation beside the student name, that indicates the student has an active IEP. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just an awareness thing so that you can, modify, make note of what resolution the student is assigned and number of days that they're assigned a resolution. So it's just kind of an informational thing. We're going to go through this in the next slide, I think, but any event of harassment or bullying requires participant entry of the victim as well. So most of the time we're only entering in offender information into behavior management tool. But for civil rights data collection, districts have to report bullying and harassment by the victim as well. So that's just a note there that, you need to enter in not only the offender, but the victim information on the participant detail of a bullying or harassment event. So again, if you select a bullying or harassment event type, then there is going to be a required selection from the harassment type drop list. So what was the basis for bullying is basically what has to be selected. And again, this is for civil rights data collection as well. And you can add multiple harassment types. So the student may have been harassed because of disability and race. So then you would enter both. You would enter 2 harassment types for that particular event. If an event type of drug, alcohol, or tobacco possession, distribution, or use is selected as an event type, under participant detail, the drug type will be a required field. So then you have to select what type of drug was involved in the event. One of the things to think about, or a couple of things to kind of do some data quality checks on and make sure that your data entry staff are aware of, is that any event of tobacco use, possession, or distribution should only have drug type selections of tobacco nicotine product or nicotine vapor products. We have a lot of data quality issues that we work with districts to clean up at the end of the year, in which they may have select tobacco as the event type, but then selected marijuana as the drug type. So those are just kinds of things that needs to be cleaned up. On the same side of that, if you choose event type of alcohol, then the drug type selection should be alcohol. And then events of drugs should not have a selection of tobacco or nicotine or alcohol as the drug type. So we're working with Infinite Campus to put some edit checks in there, so on the data entry side, that people, if they select those in discrepancy, that there's a prompt that has not been determined as to when that'll be an Infinite Campus. So it's kind of something that you really just have to look at through the Safe Schools report and do some filtering to see if there's any discrepancies between the event types and the drug types in the data entry screens. Same deal here. If weapon is the event type selected, then weapon type is required to be selected from the drop list. Weapon types of handgun, shotgun, rifle, and destructive devices are actually reported to the U.S. Department of Ed annually. So though there are other weapon types in there that will be included in your Safe Schools report, such as knife or pellet gun, anything else that can be used as a weapon, those will report on Safe Schools, but they are not reported to the U.S. Department of Ed. Only those on this slide are reported annually. Section D of the data standards goes into how to enter in the resolution details for the behavior incident. So you would select the resolution type from the drop list. These are going to be your local codes. So it could be conference with student, call to parent, it could be in-school removal, in-school detention, whatever the resolution type is, it is going to be your local code. If that local code is mapped to a state code, you'll see that directly under the drop list. It'll say state code. As you can see on the screen, this local resolution is mapped to the state code of in-school removal. Start date and times and end date and time is required. Any state mapped, any local resolution mapped to a state code have to have the start date, start time, end date, and end time entered, and that calculates automatically the duration in school days field. So though that duration in school days is a read-only field, it's calculated based on the dates and times entered on the screen and is required for state resolutions. This will help you to keep up with your days in which a special education student is removed. So it calculates that time. This duration in school days field also outputs on the Safe Schools report as the resolution length for the particular resolution. So all that kind of is tied in together to try to help navigate or accumulate the times for students being removed from the classroom or from the school. One thing to keep in mind and be careful about, we see a lot of issues in the data, is the AM and PM designations. Make sure if it's 12 o'clock noon, then you put 12 o'clock PM and not 12 o'clock AM, etc. So that's a big thing. Resolutions ending at the close of the school day should be the end date. The end date and time should be that day, the last minute of the school day, not the next day, first minute of the school day. That's going to add time to your resolution length unnecessarily. Data entry response type. Now this is section E of the behavior data standards. As I stated earlier, resolutions of restraint or seclusion, SSP 7 and SSP 8, require a corresponding restraint or seclusion response. And then vice versa, a response of restraint or seclusion requires a restraint or seclusion resolution. The response detail is all of the details of the restraint, what happened with the student prior to the restraint, during and after, what kind of de-escalation was used, what kind of restraint method was used. All of that is going to be your quote unquote documentation of the actual restraint, and it is required. You can also utilize the Safe Schools report. There's warning 2 and warning 5 will help you to find and resolve these discrepancies between response and resolution. So talking about the Safe Schools report, the Safe Schools report is located under Kentucky State Reporting and Infinite Campus Navigation. I would strongly suggest that you ensure that at least your school administrators, people responsible for entering data within the schools, have the ability to run this report. User security is a local district decision, but it is strongly recommended by KDE so that they can work throughout the year to ensure that their data is accurate. We recommend generating the report to address errors and warnings on a quarterly basis. If you're a larger district, you may choose to do that on a monthly basis. The key is to not wait till the end of the school year and try to run the Safe Schools report. Last year was an exceptional year as we didn't, students weren't actually in school for most of the year, so there wasn't a lot of Safe Schools incidents. But on a normal year, trying to wait and clean up that data and review that data at the end of the school year can become an overwhelming task. So we recommend doing it on a regular basis. You would also want to extract the Safe Schools data. So actually generate the report and open it up in Excel. You can use this for monitoring and analysis of school safety and needed student interventions. So it can help you to see which students are we having problems with, which students may need some additional help. If there's a student that's being restrained multiple times, then there needs to be some kind of intervention to see if there's a way to de-escalate that in a different way. So the Safe Schools report can help with all of that analysis and monitoring of student behavior. Some of our uses for Safe Schools data is it's publicly reported on the school report card annually. We are required by KRS 158444 to provide the raw data to the Kentucky Center for School Safety and the Office of Education Accountability by August 30th of every school year. And we use this, Office of Special Education uses this data to federally report discipline and removals of students with disabilities. So that's why that duration in school days field and resolution length on the Safe Schools report are very important, especially with your students with disabilities. And then, as I stated previously, we federally report behavior incidents involving weapons to the U.S. Department of Education annually as well. Our reporting timeline, and we're kind of right at the end of this for the actual 2021 school year. But the window for verification of the data opens on May 1st and closes on June 30th. June 30th, the window closes, which I just said, but also on June 30th, by June 30th, the superintendent or his designee and the director of special education are required to submit a survey verifying that their data is accurate. And on July 1 or the first working day after that, KDE will extract the data from the reporting warehouse. Districts do not have to submit any data to us. On July 15th, the aggregate Safe School data is available for district and school review via the secure school report card. So a lot of you guys are doing that right now for the 2021 school year. And then that window closes on July 31st. So that's the roundabout reporting timeline every year for Safe Schools. Contacts, as I stated previously, John Hill is the new program contact for Safe Schools and behavior data. And then I am still the data analysis contact and Infinite Campus contact. We'll be working John into that role as he gets some experience with Infinite Campus and the data entry side of things. And that's all I have. I feel like I did go fast again, but do we have any questions?
Yes, and we have plenty of time for them.
Okay, good.
The first one that applies to everyone is, can the in-district removal, INDR, be multiple days, or should that be just like limited to 1 day?
No, in-district removal is just like in-school removal. It can be more than 1 day. So if a student is placed in an alternative setting at the alternative school and they're there, they could be there for 5 days, then all 5 days would be part of that resolution length or the resolution start and end dates and times of the in-district removal. So it is not limited to just 1 school day.
Is there any special limits for students with disabilities on that?
In-district removal, in-school removal, and out-of-school suspensions, all those days all count as part of the 10 days of 10 allowable days for special education students. So in-district removal is included in that count.
Okay, and that's before they have to do some kind of review. but I can't remember what the name of it is, right?
If the ARC meets to determine that the placement of the student is going to be the alternative school, then the in-district removal or in-school removal could be end-dated as of that date. But that's the ARC has to meet to make that determination.
Okay.
I think that might be what you were thinking about.
Well, there's a manifestation if a student is removed more than 10 days that has to be done, but that's something totally, it's not behavior. Wendy said that's not me.
Arena, but you're right.
but it's all based on behavior records. So here's another question. We have within our district a day treatment and a juvenile detention center. If we send one of our students there due to behavior, would that count as an in-district removal?
Yes. So if the student is removed to either one of those locations because of a behavior incident that occurred at the school or on the school grounds, then yes, that would be an in-district removal.
Okay. We have a situation where DCBS or DJJ staff are not doing the restraint and seclusion. No, they're doing a restraint or seclusion and they're not recording it properly in IC. How should that be handled from a KDE standpoint?
So this is kind of a hot topic, and DJJ, though they have Infinite Campus, the DJJ staff technically do not fall under the school district or the realm of KDE. So kind of how we have handled these questions in the past, and again, Jared Sloan is actually the contact of Restraint and Seclusion at KDE, but again, how we've handled it in the past is if a local school district, a teacher at the DJJ facility that's employed by the local school district, I'm sorry, does the restraint, then that has to be entered in Infinite Campus. Where we're not getting that data is if an actual DJJ employee, someone that's not employed by the local school district, is conducting the restraint. That's when it's not being put into Infinite Campus. And there are higher level discussions about that with leadership from KDE and DJJ, but right now there is not anything that allows us to mandate that has to be entered into Infinite Campus if it's not a school district employee conducting the restraint. I hope that answered the question in a roundabout way.
It does. Thank you. We've had a role change in our safe school director. How do we change that name so they can see and work with the data tool?
Okay, so district safe school administrator is the role, and that is in-person role manager, which is one of our KDE web applications. So your district WAPOC should be able to assist with that. Excuse me. If you're not sure who that is, just please send me an email and we can work through it together. But WAPOC is Web Applications Point of Contact, I believe, Web Administrator Applications Point of Contact. Every district has one, which means they have the rights to go into Person Role Manager and make that update. Again, if they need assistance or if you need assistance, just send me an email directly and we can walk through that. But that is all maintained in Person Role Manager.
Well, and the WAPOC is listed on the KDE directory for your district. So if you scroll way down the list, because they're usually in alphabetical order, they're at the bottom, you can look it up on Open House and see who that is and contact them. And which is probably what Wendy would do, is look it up and tell you who it is. But you can look it up yourself too. So
yes.
So we'll teach you to fish.
Yes. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yes, it's on Open House directory. So you just look up your district and, like Lisa said, scroll all the way to the bottom to WAPOC, and there'll be a contact name there. Hopefully you know who that person is and you can just work with them to get it updated in Person Role Manager. It's very important to go ahead and get that done throughout the school year, or especially this summer when we have a lot of people changing roles, so that those distribution lists are maintained and updated and you don't miss any of our notifications.
And we have a slide on that during the KDE update later, but the location is openhouse.education.kentucky.gov.
Thank you, Lisa. And Dee Dee. Any more questions?
Not yet. I had one I thought of. What is the KDE guidance on when an incident should be put into Infinite Campus compared to when it occurred? I've heard horror stories of at the end of the year, somebody's got a stack of papers on their desk and they're entering behavior events since the fall, kind of thing, all at one time.
I mean, again, it would be a local district decision, but, best practice would be to enter the behavior incidents on a daily or weekly at the most time frame. If you're a smaller school, then you could probably get away with doing that, not having to do that daily. We do only pull the data. We do quarterly checks on the data, but actually pulling and using the data does only happen at the end of the school year. But we strongly recommend to not wait to enter behavior data at the end of the school year. It should really be done on a regular basis. But again, that's a local district decision. Or even a school level administrator decision. And
I did think I had to ask Jen, she gave me a assist on chat. There is one other report too, in addition, on finding errors for restraint and seclusion. Mm-hmm. It's not just the Safe Schools report warnings. It's very creatively named restraint and seclusion error report.
Yes. Yes.
And that's under Kentucky State Report and KDE reports. So
yes, it is. And that's referenced in the behavior data standards. So again, the behavior data standards has links to a lot of different reports and resources to help and assist in data quality checks and entering behavior data throughout the school year. We'll be sending those that updated link to the district Safe Schools administrators within the week as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And I believe your data standards have recently been updated and published, yes. Right?
Yes, yes, that is correct. We got them all updated prior to this training, and I have slowly been sending them out to the different district contacts. We have not sent out behavior yet, but those will be going out really soon. And there weren't a lot of changes from last year, so that's a good thing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.